All or nothing thinking. First up, we have all or nothing thinking. This is when you view situations in black or white with no middle ground. This type of thinking leaves no room for nuance, and it's unrealistic because life rarely fits into neat categories of success or failure. To overcome this, try to focus on the gray areas. Life is full of shades in between. Example, if I don't get an A on this exam, I've completely failed. Overgeneralization. Next is overgeneralization. This happens when we take one negative event and make it into a broad, sweeping statement. You say, "This always happens to me." Remember, one bad event doesn't define your entire experience. Break the pattern by asking yourself, is this really true? Does this always happen? Example, I got rejected from one job, so I'll never get hired anywhere. Mental filtering. Then we have mental filtering. This is when you focus exclusively on the negative aspects of a situation, filtering out any positives. To combat mental filtering, make a habit of appreciating the whole picture. Ask yourself, what went well? What positives am I ignoring? I got 10 compliments but only remember the one criticism. Disqualifying the positive. Closely related is disqualifying the positive. You might receive compliments or recognition but dismiss them, thinking, they're just being nice, or, I got lucky. Instead of brushing off compliments or successes, embrace them. Recognize your achievements for what they are, genuine wins. Example, they said I did a great job but they were just being nice. Jumping to conclusions. Jumping to conclusions comes in two forms, mind reading and fortune telling. Mind reading is when you assume you know what others are thinking. Challenge this by looking for real evidence. Ask yourself, do I know for sure what they're thinking? Can I predict the future? Spoiler, you can't. Example, he didn't text back right away, so he must be mad at me. Magnification and minimization. Magnification is when you blow things out of proportion, while minimization is when you downplay positive things or your own abilities. Try to keep things in perspective. Ask, is this really as big or as small as I'm making it? Example, I made one mistake, now everyone will think I'm incompetent. Emotional reasoning. Emotional reasoning happens when you believe your emotions reflect reality. You think, I feel anxious, so something bad must be happening. Remember, just because you feel something doesn't mean it's true. Challenge emotional reasoning by looking at the facts. Example, I feel anxious, so something bad must be about to happen. Should statements. Should statements create pressure by imposing unrealistic expectations on yourself or others. Thoughts like, I should always be perfect, or they should have known better. Replace should with could or would. This shift lowers the pressure and makes the situation feel more manageable. Example, I should always be perfect or I'm not good enough. Personalization. Personalization. This is when you blame yourself for things outside your control, like thinking, it's my fault the project failed, even when multiple factors were involved. Recognize that not everything revolves around you. Take responsibility where it's due, but don't carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Example, it rained on my wedding day, it's because I didn't plan well enough. Catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is when you imagine the worst-case scenario, no matter how unlikely. To overcome catastrophizing, ask yourself, what's the most likely outcome? How can I handle it if things go wrong? Labeling. With labeling, you assign a fixed, global label to yourself or others based on a single event. Remember, labels are limiting. One action or mistake doesn't define who you are as a whole person. Example, I failed the test, so I'm stupid. Blaming. Blaming is when you hold yourself or others fully responsible for something, even when it's not entirely within anyone's control. Life is rarely black and white, and responsibility is often shared. Instead of blaming, try focusing on solutions and moving forward. Example, I failed the test, so I'm stupid. Control fallacies. Control fallacies come in two forms, external and internal. In the external version, you believe everything in your life is controlled by external factors. The truth lies in the middle. We do have influence over some things but not everything. Recognize what you can control and let go of what you can't. Example, I have no control over anything that happens to me. Fallacy of fairness. The fallacy of fairness occurs when you believe that life should always be fair, and you get upset when it isn't. Life doesn't always follow a sense of fairness, and expecting it to will only lead to frustration. Instead, focus on what you can do rather than what you believe is fair. Example, it's not fair that I worked harder but didn't get promoted. Fallacy of change. Fallacy of change is the belief that if you just push hard enough, you can change others to fit your needs or expectations. You can't force people to change. They'll change only if they want to. Instead, focus on what you can control, your own thoughts and actions. Example: if I just try harder, they'll change and behave how I want. Always being right. Always being right is when you constantly feel the need to prove that your opinions or actions are the correct ones, no matter the situation. It's okay not to be right all the time. Let go of the need to win and instead focus on learning from different perspectives. Example: I must win this argument because my opinion is the only correct one. Heaven's reward fallacy. In the heaven's reward fallacy, you expect that all your hard work and sacrifices will eventually pay off, and if they don't, you feel resentment. While hard work often brings rewards, they're not always guaranteed. Focus on finding fulfillment in the process, rather than only in the outcome. Example: I've worked so hard, I deserve good things to happen to me. Shooting on others. Similar to should statements, shooting on others is when you impose your expectations onto someone else. Recognize that everyone operates differently. Rather than expecting others to follow your shoulds, focus on understanding their perspective. Example: they should have known what I wanted without me telling them. Confirmation bias. Confirmation bias happens when you only pay attention to information that confirms what you already believe, while ignoring anything that contradicts it. Challenge this by actively seeking out opposing viewpoints. Ask yourself, am I considering all the evidence? Example: I knew I was bad at this job. I'm just going to ignore all the positive feedback. Egocentric thinking. Egocentric thinking occurs when you assume that everyone thinks and feels the same way you do, or that everything revolves around you. Remember, others have their own perspectives. Ask yourself, am I considering other people's viewpoints? Example: they didn't invite me, so they must dislike me. Double standard thinking. Double standard thinking is when you hold yourself to a different, often harsher, standard than you do for others. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would give someone else. Ask, would I judge someone else this harshly? Example: it's okay for others to make mistakes, but if I make one, I'm a failure. Tunnel vision. Tunnel vision is when you focus on a single outcome or perspective, neglecting other possible solutions or viewpoints. Try broadening your perspective. Ask yourself, what other ways could I approach this? Example: there's only one way to solve this, and if it doesn't work, I'm stuck. Emotional amplification. Emotional amplification is when you take a small emotional reaction and let it escalate until it feels overwhelming. Keep your emotions in check by asking, is my reaction proportional to the situation? Example: I spilled coffee on my shirt and now my whole day is ruined. Hindsight bias. Hindsight bias occurs when you believe you could have predicted an outcome after it has already happened. You think, I should have known all along. Challenge this by recognizing that you couldn't have known the future. Ask yourself, did I have all the information at the time? Example: I should have known they were going to reject my proposal. The halo effect. The halo effect is when you let a single positive trait or experience influence your entire view of someone or something. To avoid this, judge each aspect separately. Ask, am I letting one thing overshadow everything else? Example: they're really nice, so they must be good at their job too. Thanks for sticking with us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tips. And drop a comment below. Your comments are really valuable for us.